to episode 12 of Happy Active. For those of you that don't know, I'm Ellie, and this is a great episode. Shaina is a fitness instructor, and she does nutrition, and she's a menopause coach. There's a lot of chat about perimenopause and symptoms and figuring out how to make changes in your life at various important points, figuring out how to get movement in, what movement changes you might need to make. It's really informative and loads of really, really good stuff. Yeah, so I hope you get lots out of it, especially if you're having in that kind of late 30s to 40s age bracket, and you're having some symptoms that you might not realise could be perimenopause related. This is going to be a really great way to start thinking about that and seeing if that's something you need to start looking into more, and some tips for figuring out if that's what's going on and how to advocate for yourself if you feel like your doctors aren't listening to you, which is something that very commonly comes up and that I hear about a lot. And I'm just going to let you get on and enjoy. Okay. There are many ways to find your path to better health and happiness, and what works is highly individualized. And my philosophy is that most people are more likely to find that if they're active participants in their own health and their journey. So this is a space to start exploring some of the rich and varied areas in which people practice, so that you can start thinking about what resonates with you and discover new or different practices to either start or deepen your health practices. And today I have Shaina Falcone. Why don't you tell us a bit about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Shaina. I am based out of Nova Scotia, Canada, and I'm a personal trainer. I'm a Pilates instructor. I'm a nutrition coach. I'm a menopause coach. I'm probably leaving out a bunch of things, but let's just say I'm a fitness expert, fitness and nutrition. So what I do is I help women. I have in-person clients that I do private training with. And then I have an online membership-based app where people come in and do their work, do the workouts on their own time. They're all follow along. So that's what I do. And then I run specific programs for women. They will help women at any age, really, but they're geared towards women who are, mid-30s to beyond. Not that 20-year-old women wouldn't benefit, but it's just more geared towards women in midlife. And those programs are a mix of workouts and nutrition and also mindset coaching that really help women step into their power in midlife, because it's a very challenging time. There's a lot happening with our bodies, and it gives women the tools. It gives them the workouts that are best for our bodies, in our 30s, 40s, and beyond, and then the nutrition and lifestyle guidance that we need.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting. I think part of why in your 30s you start concentrating on this stuff more is because as your hormones shift and your body changes, the stuff that you could get away with, I'm going to say,
yes.
and I don't love that language, but you know what I mean? Things you could do in your 20s, you can't anymore. Or, if you go out for a big night out, it's not cured by having a big greasy meal the next day. It's like a 3-day event of exhaustion or like all these things. And so and then suddenly you're like, oh, I didn't know any of this stuff about my body. Now I need to learn how to not have that happen, so I can still go and have a fun night out with my friends, but not have a week off afterwards to recover.
Yeah. And a lot of times, in your mid-30s or beyond, like, you have more responsibilities. So you can't just take 3 days to recover because you have stuff to do and people to take care of, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm just hitting that sort of beginning of perimenopause. My sleep's not great. And so it's just all those things. And they're quite a shock because, I'm so happy that women are talking about this more, and it's easy to find out the information, but we don't talk about this point in life at all. And I guess I thought it was something that would just happen in my 50s and be quite quick. And so then to be in my late 30s and to already be like, oh no, hold on, this is my hormones changing.
Yeah. And it started for me in my late 30s. And that was kind of the catalyst for me to sort of think, okay, if I'm a nutrition coach, I'm a personal trainer, and I don't really know what's going on,
Hmm.
and I'm already working out and I'm already eating pretty well, and like this is kicking my butt. How am I going to help others? So at that point, that's when I decided. I didn't even know you could become a menopause coach. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then I found out there's a whole certification that I could take, which actually was really really intense and really hard, because there's a lot to
Hmm.
learn. You've got to learn
Yeah.
all about the hormonal issues, all about the, like, get deep into the female anatomy. There's so much stuff. And then you
Hmm.
get into, okay, well, what are the lifestyle changes that we specifically need to make to support ourselves during this crazy hormonal time? So taking that really helped me, because it helped me, like, for
Yeah.
myself, but now I actually feel like, okay, now I know what I can do to help other women, because the workouts that I was doing probably leading up to this were not probably the best ones I should have been doing to support my hormones,
Hmm.
which I didn't really, I didn't know, because in the fitness world, it honestly was not talked about.
No.
And
So I
then,
actually, how
yeah,
I did when I did my personal training license, and then I did a pre and postnatal specialism, and part of why I did that was similar. Like, the number of trainings you go to didn't know anything about women's health, fitness, never asked you about
yeah,
your cycle and whether that was affecting your training, or like, was
mm-hmm,
pretty shocking to me. And I'm someone who's always been quite hormonally driven, so, like, in my sort of 3 or 4 days for my period, like, what I'm able to do physically is very different from what I'm able to do the week after. But so training around that matters if I want to improve and stuff. And it was pretty shocking to me that no one ever asked me about that stuff, or knew if you brought it
no,
up how to deal with it. We're just like, we'll just get a pill and eliminate that problem.
yeah.
um,
No, I was the same. When I took my pre and postnatal training, I was pregnant, and the
mm,
instructor loved it, because she was like, "Oh, well, we'll get Shaina to demonstrate all the exercises, because she's actually got a big belly." But that the reason was the same as you, because I had
mm,
done all of this training, and it's like, I don't want to say women are left out, but we are, because we have things that happen to us that don't happen to men, and it's just left out of all of the education.
yeah, and I actually listened to something last week, which, oh no, not last week, a few weeks ago, and it really made something click in my head. So it was a lady who does she, a lot of studies into, like, women's form, and she was basically saying, like, when you get taught squat mechanics, a lot
Mm,
of women can't do them, but it's because your pelvis sits differently than a
yes.
man's pelvis, especially after you've had children. So you actually can't do a squat in the same way. The mechanics are completely different. And then I said, oh, so all those times I was getting, like, yelled at in the gym for not doing them properly, I was actually doing a perfect female squat, but your pelvis is
Yeah.
in a different place, so it looks different. And I mean, that's never been brought up in any personal training course I've done
No.
until doing very specific female ones.
Yes. And it's funny, because that all that kind of stuff was brought up in the menopause certification, but was never brought up in my personal training certification ever.
Yeah, and then it's funny because in all those courses they tell you, oh, 85% of people who use personal trainers are women. So you'd think they'd
Yeah.
gear it a bit more towards what women.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. So something that I've been noticing now I'm a bit more educated about menopause, and
Hmm.
perimenopause in particular, is that there's a lot of symptoms and a lot of people don't know
Hmm.
what they are. And
Yes.
sometimes people do, and they'll go to their OBGYN, and if there hasn't been any change to their menstrual cycle, even their
Mm.
OBGYNs will quite often say, oh, well, that probably isn't perimenopause. It's probably just because you're tired because you've got young children.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite, what are the kind of early things that people can look for that might well be perimenopause?
Okay, so yes, there are other big ones, such as changes in your cycle, which is what most people will notice, because that's a
Hmm.
pretty big one. Because when your cycle used to be 28 days and now it's like 20 days, that's, you feel like you're
Hmm.
always on your period. So that's one, any type of change or irregularity. But there are things, like you said, that wouldn't get noticed, because we just, even we would brush it off. So things like
Hmm.
brain fog, um, mood swings, higher anxiety, trouble, any type of sleep disturbance, whether it's insomnia or whether it's waking up. Um, frozen shoulder and joint pain, joint inflammation. There are so many. I'm like, okay, don't forget me. Heart palpitations, just being low energy, being tired, hot flushes, which a lot of people do know that, and also night sweats. And then there are, the things that people don't want to talk about as readily, but still happen to a lot of women. So like pelvic floor issues, pelvic pain, incontinence, vaginal dryness, trouble, like feeling any type of sort of like urinary trouble, like feeling like you've got to go to the bathroom more often, having more UTIs, leaking. Like this is all, all perimenopause or menopause related, because we have those sex hormone receptors through our whole body, not just, in our reproductive areas. So it will affect our whole body. But yeah, there's often times where maybe we don't connect the dots, or maybe a doctor doesn't connect the dots because it doesn't, like you said, it's not related to your cycle.
Yeah, or I think maybe sometimes those, especially, I guess it gets complicated where things like brain fog or anxiety, if that's the one thing, there can be other causes for that. But when it's I've just seen a few women recently where they've said like, I'm not really sleeping as well. I've got brain fog and like one or two other things, and you think, well, it feels like that's the most likely cause, so maybe we could try some of the stuff around that first.
So what we do recommend that women do is start to keep a journal of your symptoms, any and all symptoms, so that when you do go to your doctor, you have a comprehensive list of all the things that are happening to you. So that will help you and them, because it will give them a better idea of like, okay, are there things that we need to look at in terms of red flags, in terms of illness, or is this, hormonally related?
Yeah, and actually that's why I've got an aura, but there's lots of different things you can use for that, but tracking symptoms, so you can start to see a pattern of like, oh yeah, it is always in those 3 or 4 days before my period, or it is always in that luteal phase, or you start to get a sense of it must be hormonal because the pattern is those things only happen at these points in my cycle.
Yeah. And, it's annoying that we have to do this. Like men don't have to do this, but we really do have to be very proactive about our health if we don't want this whole phase to really not feel good. Like perimenopause can last 10 years. That's a long time. I started in my late 30s. I'm 47 now. I don't feel like there's an end in sight. Yeah. Luckily, I feel like I have now sort of gotten things down, and my doctor and my gynecologist and I are working on the HRT piece to just keep adjusting as needed. But it's like you need a whole thing.
Yeah, and it's tricky because I get a lot of pushback sometimes from people when you talk about like syncing your workouts to your cycle or being more in tune, because people don't want to feel like it's holding them back or that it's the cause of something. It can feel quite negative, but I try and say to people like, the more aware you are of these things, the more you can work with your body and with them, and then at least the disconnect isn't that you're fighting against something as well. So
and the way I look at it is just listen to your body on the day, and your body will tell you. If I'm having a really heavy period day, I'm not doing leg day. I just can't. And often my private clients will message me and they'll say, hey, it's day whatever of my period. Can we do a lighter workout today?
Yeah.
Yes. And everybody's different, because for me, the days before my period are fine. It's when I'm actually on my period that I feel like just garbage. For some women, though, it will be the days leading up to. They'll have less energy. So it's really, you do have to become in tune with your own body and know what will work for you.
Yeah, which I think is really important anyway. Like the more data you have, right, the more you can and that, I think that's kind of what I mean when I say about being an active participant in your health. Like the more you know about your body and how it works and what feels good for you, the more you can be in tune with that and optimize for whatever way it is that you want to be, whether that's to be fitter or to be like have more longevity or to feel more resilient or all these different things.
Sometimes it's hard to think of it as just gathering data, but that is what it is. And if I'm working with someone on nutrition and I'm asking them to track their food, sometimes that can be really hard for people. because it can feel triggering and it can bring out emotions. And I just try to say to them, look, like, we're just gathering data. We're just gathering information. We're not going to judge what we see, but we do need that information because we can't make changes if we don't know what we're doing currently.
Yes. So nutrition is something that I find interesting because it means so many different things, so many different people. And it's definitely an area where there's so much misinformation that it...
Yes.
And so how do you deal with that when people come in and they've got...
You know what? It's hard because I want to honor how people feel about their nutrition, because I do understand that it's personal and everybody has like their own stories that they've told themselves around food and how they eat. So, you know, if I'm doing like a general type of program, I'll sort of just give more general information. And then if I'm doing a specific nutrition counseling with somebody, I'll look at their specific issues. But for most people don't want to do like the calorie counting, the weighing of the food, blah, 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 blah. And it's not because that doesn't work, because it does work. Scientifically, it works. But for a lot of women, it doesn't feel right for them. Like it feels too restrictive. And then all of a sudden the joy in eating is lost. Yeah. So for most people, we don't use that route, but we do track our macros in a way that feels more natural to us. So, you know, I do want them to be aware, like, what is a protein? What is a carb? What is a fat? And how much of each are you eating each day? But without weighing, like we have our system that we use that we can sort of, it's like gentle nutrition. We're gently tracking it. We're paying attention. When things don't feel right, we look at what we're eating and then we adjust. But we're not a slave to like inputting every little calorie and weighing everything, because we need to enjoy our food.
Yeah. And I guess because of like diet culture to a certain extent and just, all those kind of things, for a lot of people, food has become like a point of stress rather than something joyful. Yeah.
And I also kind of look at it like a stoplight system. So we don't have to label a food as good or bad, even though there are definitely foods that are higher, have more nutrient density than other foods. Like they are, there's definitely, we can't argue that broccoli is more nutritious than a bag of chips. Like that's a fact. However, that doesn't mean you should never eat the bag of chips. So I kind of like to use a stoplight system, like, okay, well, what foods are just green light foods for you all the time? And green light means like you enjoy them, they make you feel good, you're not going to overeat them and then feel horrible about yourself. Like, what are those foods for you? And for most people, they are the foods that are quote unquote like healthiest, they are the things like the vegetables, the fruits, the whatever. And then we have our yellow light foods, which are like, I'll eat these sometimes, but it might bother my stomach, so I'm not going to eat it all the time, or I might overeat this, or, I'll have it as a treat. And then we have our red light foods, which are like, I know I'm going to overeat this. I can't eat just one. If I eat this, my digestive system won't be happy, or I'll have some sort of negative effect, whether it's emotional or physical. And then we try to limit those red light foods just because for that person, they're not going to be as good for you mentally and physically. But those foods are not the same for everybody.
No. And it is funny, because you can have weird things that have happened around certain foods, or at some point it's like your comfort food, and so it has negative associations or whatever. Yeah, and I think in the long term, like helping people to build the habit back so that eventually they can have those again if they want to. Exactly. But in a way that isn't, all right, well, I can't have chocolate cake because if it comes in the house, I'll eat the whole thing. Yeah. You want them to get
being able to have just a piece of chocolate cake and enjoy it.
And it could sit in the refrigerator for a week and they wouldn't be like secret eating it. Like, that's the dream, isn't it?
It is the dream, and it's hard, and we can't pretend that it's not hard, because we've all grown up with these disordered eating messages around us. And in fact, it was this morning on Instagram, I saw it was a dietitian critiquing someone else's post, and the post she was critiquing was a girl that was saying, well, I live by the 3-bite rule. I have 1 bite to say hello, I have 1 bite to enjoy, and 1 bite to say goodbye. And the dietitian was like, just eat the cake. Like, just eat the piece of cake. If you're going to have the cake, and someone pointed out, and this was my first thought, like, that's a lot of food waste. Now you're throwing out 3/4 of the cake.
Yeah.
So
and I
that's
want to be able to go to things
towards.
like kids' birthday, like my children's birthday parties, and enjoy, not be thinking the whole time, oh no, there's like a pizza in the room, or like whatever it is. You want to be able to just enjoy it and know that if that's the only food available, fine, because it's not going to derail you or make you upset or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. Like, one good meal isn't going to change your whole diet, and one quote unquote bad meal isn't going to. So, but it's hard to get to that place. And I know, like, as a teenager, I had definitely disordered eating patterns that I had to work my way out of. So I don't pretend that it's easy. I know it's really difficult for people.
No, and that's something that I say loads. Everyone listening will be bored of hearing me say this, but like simple and easy are like easily confused, but they're not the same thing. Like, we all know.
I can tell you very simply what to do.
Yeah, and like most of us know, like, you want to sleep more, do more exercise, eat better. It really sounds simple, but it's not. That doesn't make it easy to do simple things.
No, and that's why when I work with my clients, like, we can't leave things to chance. Like, we do have to. We have to plan, but again, not in a way that feels like you're so restricted. So maybe can we plan 3 of your meals this week? Yeah. And we know that we're going to have like something that you enjoy, but it's also something that's nutritious, and we're going to find some recipes that you like to cook. And then, we'll have some days where maybe you don't have a plan, or maybe you're the type of person that you need a plan for 5 nights of the week or 7 nights of the week. Maybe you do. So it is really individual, but having prep work and planning done ahead of time helps, because like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to buy these foods because I know I'm going to make them this week. And then you're not sitting there staring at the fridge and all you have is like nothing. And then you have to go get pizza because you didn't plan. And then it starts a spiral of like, I'm disappointed in myself, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe you planned for the pizza though. But maybe you're like, Friday night, we're having pizza.
Yeah.
And then the joy in that is so different than, when you did it, when you had the pizza because you were like, oh, I'm such a screw up, I'm just going to have pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so much of those like unhealthy mindsets around food can come from that guilt, where actually if you can eliminate that, then it's much easier to go, okay, great, we're going out for dinner. I don't have to worry about what food there is and isn't on the menu. I can just have whatever I want because I know that I've already done the grocery shopping for next week, and I know that the next 4 days I've got like other stuff, so I don't need to. Yeah.
And I also like to I mean, I know not everybody likes to cook, but I do like to encourage, like, let's find some meals that are nutritious that you also enjoy eating. Like, how can we take your favorite takeout meal and make it at home, and maybe make it with, some more nutrients in it? Yeah. Because I mean, I think there is a lot of like, I don't know, maybe it's more in like the bodybuilding world, but like, we don't need to eat boiled chicken and broccoli. Like, we can make some really white rice. Yeah. We can make some really delicious meals that are both, tasty and are going to be high in nutrients. Like,
and it's so funny because with those ingredients, with like some nice vegetables, some rice and some chicken, with like spices and sauces, you can make
and a nice sauce,
like 10 unbelievably delicious meals that are all quite different. Like, you're basically eating the same thing, but you can add like, you can make it like Indian one night and like Chinese another night, and it can all be it's the same food, but it's just so much nicer. It's like joyful.
Joyful, yeah. Like, if I had to eat the boiled chicken and rice and broccoli every day, I wouldn't want to eat that. That's for sure.
My husband, when I first met my husband, he was training for a marathon, and like he would happily eat just chicken, and to be fair, he would put different sauces on the chicken, but essentially he would just eat chicken and rice like 5 nights a week. And I guess for him it was like, I don't have to think about it, and if I put hot sauce on it, fine. But I was like, I can't do that. Like, I just can't. Like, I will cook you meals that have all the same things in, but I can't eat like this. But I also I get that you're marathon training and it's quite specific, but
nobody can live like that for a long time. I mean, it's funny when you say that. When I met my husband, he was just like stunned by my kitchen, because he was like, you have so many spices and herbs. And I'm like, well, what? He had like salt and pepper and maybe basil. Like, how do you live? How do you cook? I still to this day, I don't know what he ate.
No, and it's funny because now in the pandemic, actually, we got like a smoker barbecue, and so now he makes these amazing things in it because he like got really into making all his own spice mixes at home.
That's
In
nice.
part because I was like, I cannot bear how much salt and sugar there is in all of, and I don't like things that taste too sweet if they're supposed to be savory. I mean, it's just like but in America when we moved here, there's a lot more sugar in stuff, and so a lot of those pre-packaged spice mixes, I just didn't like them because they were too sweet, and so he started making them at home, and then he's really into it. It's great for me. So
that is great for you.
makes all these amazing, but again, it makes like, just if we're having chicken, it makes it so much jazzier when you've got like all these nice different flavors to put on them.
You can still have your chicken, but it doesn't have to be boring.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I think it's interesting though. I was shocked when I started doing this work how many people don't cook, because I guess it's just such an integral part of my day. And that for me, that was my big culture shock when I started doing this work, is how many people maybe only cook once a week. And I didn't realize how common it is for people not to cook. And so that, having to walk people through that was a big shock.
Yeah. And I do have clients that I'm like, okay, can we cook 2 nights a week? And then, you know, I guess the good thing is now there are a lot of like meal order services. That was not something 10 years ago. No. So people can get, you know, their meal delivered, and it's relatively healthy, I think. That is good. But yeah, I'm even like, okay, look, you don't have time to roast a chicken, that's fine, but we could use a rotisserie chicken. Yeah. And we can get a bag of frozen vegetables, and then we can like maybe take 3 minutes and make a nice sauce, and then, you know, we have something. So there are little shortcuts. Like, there's nothing wrong with buying frozen vegetables. There's nothing wrong with buying pre-cut vegetables. And, you know, like there are shortcuts we can take if those are barriers.
Yeah. And I mean, our like really quick go-to like weekday meal is literally, bag of frozen veg, rice, bang an egg in it, and then whatever protein there is in the house. And that takes 3 minutes to make. And it's definitely all shortcut, but it's covers all the bases, takes 5 minutes to make, and it's relatively healthy. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's all stuff that we've pretty much always got in the house. So if we've forgotten to, and I love having those quick things that are like, what's in the cupboard?
Yeah. And so that's another thing that I tell clients, like, let's have some things always in the house so we're not stuck. So let's have some frozen veg always in the freezer. Let's have some chicken or whatever protein you like always in the freezer. Yeah. And that way on days when you haven't planned, at least you can defrost something or have something. Yeah.
Yeah, I am big. It's trying to find those shortcuts that work for people as well, because that's the other thing, like what works for, because I realize as well, a lot of the time when people are having this problem, you know, they'll have gone somewhere and maybe got like a proper meal plan, but then 50% of the things on that are things they don't like or they won't eat. You know, there's no point in getting a meal plan from someone if you don't eat fish and that is really fish based, or it's you know, like, and so helping people find those, discover it for themselves with the education is helpful.
Yeah. And with my clients, I call those go-to meals. Like, just list 5 go-to meals. Because I remember when I first took my very first nutrition certification course, it was in person, and someone said like, oh, are we gonna get meal plans? We're gonna be able to get meal plans. And I remember the teacher, she was so funny, she was so dry. She was like, why would you want them? No one's gonna follow them. And we were all like, but you know, she's like, look, people, you could give them all the meal plans, but people have their own way that they like to eat. And it's true. So
and what's easy for you isn't necessarily easy for someone else.
Well. And what you like, everybody has different likes and dislikes. So what are your go-to meals? And then how can we work from there?
Yeah. And like some people love batch cooking. Some people don't.
Yes.
Like it's all those things. Some people can eat the same, like I said, some people can eat the same meal every day for a week, so they can make that on Sunday.
And then they just put it in the freezer, and then that's what they can eat that for the week. I can't do that. I even I struggle with leftovers. Like I can eat a leftover the next day, but then the next day after that, I'm like, I tell my husband, I'm like, you need to eat this now. I'm done with it.
Yeah, we try and do a mix if we batch cook, but it'll be, so it's going in the freezer, not for this week.
Yes.
So then there's like an option of various things.
Which is a great idea. That's a great idea.
Which I started doing, I did that when I was pregnant, and now we love it because it means like, if you're making, I don't know, soup, it's easy. It's just as easy to make 4
Double
times the amount you need
freeze.
for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those kind of things help me as well.
Yeah. My problem is I have two sons and they're
Ah,
12 and 14. So the
oh.
amount that they eat sometimes surpasses what I had planned, and then there's no leftovers. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to adjust to having like two small men that I have to feed.
Oh, and they're at that growing age, like they eat and eat and
There.
eat
It's
and eat.
going out to dinner has become so expensive because they eat like grown men and they don't seem to get full.
No, I remember
Yeah.
I have two brothers, and I remember when they were teenagers, one of them at school, they would make a pre-lunch, so their like morning break at
Ooh.
10, they would just get given pasta because the school was like, these boys, like, you've just got to keep putting carbohydrates into them in like huge quantities, otherwise they are impossible. It seemed to work quite well.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I should be sending them to school with like an extra container of pasta. Maybe I will do that.
So they're always on the move at that age, aren't they? And they're growing. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. That's a whole other hormonal thing that we won't get into
Yeah.
today.
I know they talk about that with women, don't they? There's like it's like the big three instead of just that big one that the boys get. But you have like adolescence, and then if you
Hmm.
have children, the big
Yes.
shift in your body then, and then
Hmm.
menopause.
Yes.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah. And then if, women now are tending to have children later. So sometimes you're having the, hormones related to the pregnancy, but you're also having hormonal changes related to perimenopause. And that's really challenging for a lot of women.
Yeah. So I did IVF to have my daughter, and we recently did a round that didn't work, but it was interesting because when I went to my OBGYN, I said, I'm having loads of weird symptoms, and she was like, oh, that'll be the IVF hormones. And I said, no, because that was like 4 months ago. She was like, yeah, but you're almost 40 now, and it takes your body like twice as long, probably each year. It'll double the amount of time it takes your body to process them. So even in that like 3 years between doing the last lot of hormones and then this lot,
Hmm.
it is amazing how much more they affected me in what is quite a
Yeah.
short space of time.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
That's not fun.
No, I just wasn't prepared for that because I was like, well, I just did
Hmm.
this a few years ago and it was I sort of thought I would know what I was expecting. And it is just
Yeah.
that your whole body hormone has changed, so it all processes it
Yeah.
completely differently. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. The things we go through are,
Mm.
we could talk about it all day.
Yeah, and that you don't know about your body until it happens. Because I
Yeah.
guess I was surprised that no one told me that would happen but it is
Hmm.
just that like women's medical. I guess a lot of them are just like, we don't really know.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard for women because some doctors, like my doctor, I don't know if it's because she's female, but she's on it. Like she
Mm.
doesn't even whatever I want is fine. Like she trusts me. But I have two friends, like one friend who went to her doctor and said, like, I'm having these symptoms, and his first reaction was to put her on an antidepressant. And she was like, well, I'm not depressed, I'm in perimenopause. And it's been an ongoing struggle. She's like, I just want some hormones.
Yeah.
Because she's already doing all the lifestyle things, she's working out with, like, she's one of my clients, so she's working out with me, she's on top of her nutrition. But sometimes like it's never going to be one thing that like makes it all better. Like it's always going to be all the tools in your toolbox. And for some women, hormones are a great tool. No, they're not right for everybody. Some women can't take them for various reasons. Some women don't have success, but it's frustrating if you want them and your doctor is the roadblock and you don't have a medical reason why you can't get them.
Yeah, and especially if especially if once they've written down, oh well, it's just depression or anxiety, that can be quite difficult as well because
Yeah.
as soon as
Now
that's
she's
in
got to
there,
get through that. Yeah, because
yeah,
that's actually a symptom of perimenopause because we have estrogen receptors that interact with our brain.
yeah,
So yeah, she does have anxiety, but it's likely, related to the hormonal changes. I had another friend who told me, she said, I think I'm having heart problems. And I said, okay, what's going on? And she described, having heart palpitations and then having a heat that kind of spread up her body, like from her feet. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, it sounds like, perimenopause. It sounds like a hot flush. She said, so I went to my doctor and I got my blood pressure taken and it was fine. And he told me just to keep monitoring my blood pressure and said I'm fine and sent me home. And I said, did he mention perimenopause or hot flushes or heart palpitations? She was like, no. And at that time, she was 48. And I'm thinking,
Yeah, because that's not even
what?
an early. That's not like someone in
No,
their
that's
late
like
30s where
prime
they might
age.
miss it. Yeah, that should be
Yeah,
almost
that
top
is,
of the list of like
that should be
women's.
top of the list. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you
So then
still
she had to go
menstruating?
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So it is frustrating because it's not every doctor is going to be like, okay, let's go. What can we do?
Yeah, and I think it seems to be an area where there's still so much studying to be done. So I think in medical school, it's
Yes.
not taught because it's
It's
emerging
not.
research, and so then it's which doctors are keeping up with that. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess people, in the same way that we both started doing when we hit these points,
Yeah.
started educating ourselves. You kind of educate yourself in the area that you're interested in.
Well, yeah, because it's funny. So my gynecologist, I don't know if this is TMI, but I'm going to share everything because it could help. So we started me on vaginal estrogen, which a lot of people don't realize doesn't go through your whole body.
Mm-hmm.
It is just for those vaginal symptoms and like the urinary symptoms, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't go through into the tissues of the rest of the body. So it's just
Yeah.
for treating like anything down there. So we started me on that. And then I started on a birth control pill because my symptoms at the time were more period related, and we were trying to
Mm-hmm.
manage that. And then we switched to a different pill, and I was having some breakthrough bleeding. And so she said, you know what? I am going to confer with the menopause specialist that's at the hospital because I'm not exactly sure what our next step should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that she told me, like, look, I don't actually have the best knowledge, but I do know somebody who does. I'm going to go talk to them, and then we'll decide what course of action to take. I love that.
Yeah,
And she
same.
was very honest that she didn't have that training, but was going to go to somebody that did.
Yeah, and that's always how you can tell that someone's good, because if they're just straight away saying no,
Yes.
it definitely can't be that when you're pretty sure it is, they're never going to consider
Yeah.
that. And you might be wrong, but you
Yeah.
need to consider all the possibilities.
Yeah.
It's interesting that now more and more women online are talking about this stuff, that you're much more likely to be able to educate yourself, to advocate for yourself in those circumstances where you're not getting it the first time.
Yeah. And it's hard because like the medical piece is one piece, but then the other lifestyle interventions are also equally as important. And I think that's hard because some women may feel like, well, if I could just get HRT, everything's going to be solved.
Yeah.
But, the hormone therapy, if you decide to go that route, works best when you're also, doing the strength training and making the nutrition changes and maybe making some changes to your sleep and that type of stuff. So it really all does work best when you put it all together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that in general about everything. If you're
Yeah.
stressed, your nutrition's not going to work. And so
Yes.
for people who understand that about their body before they get to menopause, it's a bit less shocking because they've already understood that, like, when they're stressed out, they don't get as much value out of their food, or they don't sleep as well, and they kind of already have that innate understanding that it's all connected. But I think because you can't avoid it once you get to menopause or to perimenopause, that can be a bit more of a shock for people where they've never had to do that before.
Well, yeah. And even for my own workouts, like when I sort of was coming into this phase, I was very into like the boot campy style workouts, like a lot. I felt like I really needed to do a lot of intense cardio, and strength training I did it, but it was definitely more secondary. Like I didn't prioritize it. And then once I shifted to like, okay, I actually need to build some muscle here, and started almost just like slowing down, and I didn't need to do like a 45-minute crazy cardio workout. Like I could do a 30-minute targeted strength workout and then feel like, oh, I'm done for the day. I'll go for a walk later. And that's when I really started to see and feel the changes in my body. So part of it is because as we go into this stage, like our tissues don't recover as quickly. So I was just going hard like most days, and my body was like, we're not okay with this.
Yeah.
So once I did sort of change the way I was exercising, I felt so much better.
Yeah. I think as well, it can be difficult. So something that I think it's a particular problem in our generation because of kind of what we all grew up with, but a lot of women are quite frightened about strength training
Yes.
because they don't want to look muscular. And so that can be a
Yes.
barrier as
It's
well.
a big barrier. And I mean, so like, it's hard because I don't want to not validate
Hmm.
people feeling like that. Like you feel your feelings and I get that. Um, the bulky look, I guess, could be coming from like when you're building muscle and maybe, consuming more calories as well, but in a way that's not supporting the muscle growth.
Hmm.
So that can happen. Um, but truly, it's very hard to build muscle. So most women are just not going to get bulky because building muscle takes so much work. And you
Yeah.
do have to lift at such a high intensity that, like, rather than worry about getting bulky, just, focus on getting strong because that's what
Hmm.
you really need to live your life better. That's what's going to help you, you know, fight disease, be less tired, live independently. Like, those are the real good goals. And you'll
Yeah.
probably find that along the way you don't get bulky. Or maybe your mindset changes. Like for me, I noticed like my t-shirts are tighter now around my biceps than they used to
Hmm.
be. I'm not mad about that. Like I actually am really happy about that. Whereas
Yeah.
maybe like a different mindset would have been like, oh, like my arm looks a little bigger, but I like the way it looks. I'm really happy. I'm really
Yeah.
proud of that muscle. So reframing it can also really help.
Yeah. I mean, I love feeling strong. So, but I guess that took a while to
Yeah.
understand. Like, I love, yeah, feeling strong, especially my legs. Like, I feel so good when my legs are strong. But I have like quite big thighs and a big butt, so they do bulk up quite quickly. But I don't mind that anymore. And I just
Yeah.
love how much more powerful and grounded I feel when I'm strong.
Yeah. And I mean, I always will recommend like focus on the way it makes you feel
Hmm.
first and foremost, because that's what's going to keep you coming back to the exercise. Like if
Yeah.
you're only exercising to look a certain way, the commitment piece is probably not going to be there. But if you get really addicted to that feeling strong, that feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I can do,
Hmm.
that feeling is what's going to help you be very consistent in your fitness.
Yeah, I'm big on helping people find what they enjoy, especially if people aren't keen on doing things like weightlifting. Fine, you don't have to start with that, but like find some movement you enjoy. Find some. So when I first started doing personal training, I actually only work with people who hate exercise and don't like gyms and have kind of
Yeah.
a lot of people have trauma from high school about gyms in
Well,
particular
yeah.
and sport. So I only work with people like that. So a lot of it is just walk. Okay, we're just going to walk together and then maybe do a little
Yeah.
bit of jogging or find some like functional movement that is doing the same thing, but it's not like being in a gym with kit doing stuff.
Hmm.
And essentially, because when you're not seeing exercise as like punishment or something that you hate, suddenly
Yeah.
it's not like a chore. It's just then you want to do it because you're focusing
Yeah.
on the feeling.
Well, and I always tell women, like, I was not a gym person. Like,
Hmm.
I was not being picked first in gym class for the teams. Like, no
Yeah.
one wanted me on their team. Like, I was not an athlete.
Yeah.
And even when I was getting my personal training certification, I remember like they wanted us to go and work out with other people in the gym. And I had this guy, and I was probably like mid 20s at the time, so he was super young. Maybe he was even like 18. And they were like, "Oh, let's have so and so put you through a workout." And if that had been my only experience with working out, I don't know that I would have gone back. Like it was way too hard. I told him so many times like I think this is too heavy. I feel like I'm hurting myself. He was like, "Nah, you're fine." Like an 18-year-old guy would. But that's
Yeah.
why like you know, that could have ruined my experience with it. So I totally understand when women are like, I don't know about weightlifting. Like, that doesn't sound fun to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of like, I guess, sort of broy culture around it that can make it feel quite off-putting to
Yeah.
start with.
And like, when I tell people, like, okay, well, in order to build muscle, like, we do need to lift a little heavy, but heavy is a relative term. I don't mean that you need to go out and get 60-pound dumbbells. I mean, like, heavy for you could be two 10-pound dumbbells, and then we just
Yeah.
build from there. Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden like grabbing these giant weights. So, we're all just going to start where we are and go up. And I have people message me all the time being like, I bought two 15-pound dumbbells. I'm so excited. And that's amazing. Like, that's amazing. And that's their heavy. And that was my heavy once too.
Yeah.
So like, we have to just sort of go and rethink like what a heavy weights mean. And heavy can also be dependent on the exercise and the angle of the exercise. Like, there are some exercises where I still am only doing a 10-pound weight because of the angle of the work and the size of the muscle group I'm working.
So you said at the beginning that you do Pilates instructing. So I've just started doing
Yes.
Pilates, and I put some ankle weights on the other day, and whew, I was shaking so quickly, and that is just because of the angle you're holding it at. You're like, wow, that is spicy.
Yeah, so not every exercise, like, you know, like there are the traditional exercises like a bicep curl where yes, you're going to gradually go up in weight because you know those muscles tend to be stronger. But you know, if I'm doing like a lateral raise on an angle with one weight, like, no way, I can't hold a 20-pound for that. I'd die.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. And I do think these things there's so many more options now for people, and it's so nice because you don't have to feel like, well, you just have to do that one class, or you have to do
exactly.
You can find the thing and then build from there.
Yeah, and that's why, like, in my program that I offer, like, there are Pilates workouts you can do. There's joint mobility workouts you can do. There are cardio workouts with no weights you can do. Yes, there's strength training. You can do like a bar workout. So I do try to give that variety because I do know that, like, okay, yeah, I would like you to strength train twice a week, but we also have all these other options that we can do, and we're going to feel really good. And it doesn't have to be just that one. Like, it doesn't have to be either Pilates or strength training.
Yeah.
Like,
bit of both.
If we can do a bit of both, and we don't have to, and we also don't have to do hour-long workouts. Like, we can do 30 minutes of strength and then 15 minutes of Pilates, and it's enough. We're good.
Yeah, and I split up my workouts now. So the Pilates I actually do after dropping my daughter off at childcare before I start work, because it helps transition me into like out of mum mode and into like job mode. So it sets my mind up well for the day. And then in the evening, I like weightlifting because it's like a bit of stress relief.
Yeah. And I love that idea of splitting up the workout and not just do it. Like, because a lot of women don't have like a big chunk of time to do everything. And some days I'll, you know, like I set a little schedule for my clients. So, you know, on the day where they do strength, they're like, well, should I also do this and this and this? I'm like, no. Just do the strength. You're okay. And then maybe on a day where like they're going to do walking, maybe that's when you do a Pilates workout on that day. Like, we can split it up throughout the week and not feel like we have to cram everything in. Yeah.
And that for me, that was a really big mindset shift actually, of like splitting stuff out. You don't have to find an hour. You can find 2 half hours or 3 15 minutes, and then you're still getting the same amount done in the day.
Yeah. I have a woman who did one of my recent programs, and she messaged me and she said, is it okay if, like, because my kids interrupt me, and like she had kids at home with her, and she's like, if I do like 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night, like, any movement that you can get in your day is always better than none. So you just do what works for you. I feel like we're so hard on ourselves on like what we should do, or, you know, like, just do what you can do, because things change and shift. Like, my kids are 12 and 14. The time that I have now, some days I have way more time. Some days I'm driving them everywhere and I don't. But I do have more me time than I had when they were toddlers and they were like, needed me all day. So things do change, and sometimes you find like, oh my gosh, I have so much time today. And other days you don't.
Yeah, because you're a taxi now.
Now I'm a taxi. Yes, exactly. Spend way too much time in a vehicle, but at the same time I'm like, well, I would rather be driving them to their sports and activities than have them at home on a screen, because that's what they will do if they're sitting at home.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I actually talk to women about when they've got kids is really from quite young trying to include your kids in it, to like normalize it. And so I have like my daughter, she can only count to 3, but so she just counts to 3 over and over again when I'm doing reps, and she loves it. Super fun. I mean, I often means I do way more than I'm supposed to because I've got no idea how many I've done. Or I have her like hold my water, and she's like, you know, and it's modeling to them how to be involved, but also it's good for them to see you making time for yourself, and it's fun. Like, it's an activity for her. She loves counting.
Yeah. My kids have seen me work out, like, since they were born. And so that's just normal to them. And actually now they're both quite sporty. But my 14-year-old, he actually goes and does the workouts on my app every night. He doesn't really want me to watch him. So I try to give him that time, but sometimes, I'll peek in and be like, okay, so just open your chest a little bit. Okay, bye. I mean, he often says, he's like, when you die, I'm taking over your business. Like, okay then.
Not actually that old, but thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, well, we'll keep that on the docket for later.
That's amazing, and that's the thing. That's like the power of like making it so normal that like being active is a part of your everyday life that has to be fit in, and then they see that and they understand that it's important for them too.
Yeah, I mean, his motivation as a 14-year-old boy is so different from mine. Like, he's down there, he's got his shirt off. Like, I see him, he's like checking himself out in the mirror. I'm like, that's okay. It's still good for your health. Your motivation may be different from mine, but like, it's all right.
Yeah, but I think my motivation as a teenager and at 20 was very different than it is now as well.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
Whatever method, it's good.
Yeah. Exactly. He'll take it with him as he grows.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so great. And I love talking to people who are doing that like more holistic work and helping people figure out how all the pieces join together, because I think it's so important to not just be just working out in a vacuum or just eating, like having that understanding of how it all fits together is so essential to like progress, basically.
Yeah, we all have to find what works for us.
Yes, exactly. I think it's great when people who work in these spaces are able to understand that like what works for them isn't going to work for all their clients, and help them find what works for them rather than have like prescriptive do this, do that. And so I think that's awesome. I will put it all in the show notes, but where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram is where I would be most active. So at Shaina Falcone Fitness, and then they could go to my website, ShainaFalconeFitness.com.
Great. And that's where your membership is, isn't it? On the website.
Yeah, that's where it is. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think your Instagram's great because it's got lots of like, it's got a nice mixture of like practical advice and like things people can try. So people are interested in this stuff, I definitely recommend they check it out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.